Do I pay off my student loans first? Should I start saving for retirement first? What options do I have? What if I fall behind in investing? These are incredibly common questions that most people have when they come out of school, medical school, undergrad, dental school, with a significant amount of student loans, but also realize the importance of starting to save for retirement. It's important not to fall behind on either one, and we'll talk about finding the right equilibrium between the two and what makes the most sense. So let's first underscore the importance of saving for retirement. So starting early, number one, the power of compounding. The earlier you start saving for retirement, the more time your money has to compound. Let me give you an example. If you're 20 years old and you start contributing $250 a month for 20 years, from age 20 to age 40, and earned an average rate of return of 7%, and never contributed ever again. So age 20 to age 40, never contributed again. By age 60, you have $465,000 in the account. You would have put in $66,000 in that same account and would have accumulated $475,000. You would have accumulated $60,000 in that account and accumulated $475,000. However, if you had waited until the age of 30, 10 years later, contributed the same amount, $250 a month, but did that for 30 years instead of 20 years, so from age 30 to age 60, $250 a month, average return of 7%, you would have $283,000. That's $192,000 less, even though you contributed for 10 years longer, showing that even just a little bit, starting early, goes a long way. Number two, overcoming Social Security shortcomings. Who the heck knows where Social Security is going to be in the next 15, 20, 30 years? In my opinion, it'll be there, but it's going to look a lot different than it does now. So it makes sense to take control of your retirement contributions and savings and not rely on Social Security in the future to sustain whatever lifestyle you may have. Achieving financial freedom is number three. You may get to a point where you may not want to fully retire. You may want to still continue to work, but do something you love to do and get paid doing it. This is the camp that I think a lot of people are in right now. We work with a lot of retirees who retire after a year or two and they just frankly get bored and they want to start doing something. Maybe make a couple grand a month. Starting early with your retirement plan contribution sets you up for financial independence much sooner. All right, the way to student loans. So let's look at the other side of the coin and the challenges with student loans. So there's interest accumulation, which is an obvious one. But there are some student loans where interest actually starts accumulating the day you take out the loan, even if you haven't made a repayment. So while you're in college, there are some loans that start to earn interest, start to accumulate interest, potentially setting you back even further. So number one, find out if your student loan interest actually starts to accumulate while you're in school or when you get out. All right, number two, mental and emotional toll. Student loans can play a significant source of stress and anxiety. Number three, restricted financial flexibility. So when you start to repay your student loans, having a large balance with high interest rates can restrict you from spending money on things that are actually important to you. All right, so a balancing act. Given that both are important, it'll make sense to strike a balance between the two. You have one that is not optional in paying off the student loans, and you have one that's optional, but it's important in starting early to contribute to retirement savings. So in my opinion, there's a balancing act. You can do both. How do we do that? Number one, assess your total financial landscape or your financial ecosystem right now. What does your balance sheet look like? What do you own? What do you owe? How much money are you making? And where are expenses going? Number two, create a detailed inventory of all your student loans. Print it out or write it out. How much student loans do you have for each one? Are they federal? Are they private? What's your interest rate? What are your repayment options? Number three, evaluate your current retirement savings options, if any. And number four, budget. All right, so what's the strategy with your student loan payments? Number one, prioritize some of the smaller ones first. My opinion, it's called the debt snowball method, where we prioritize your smaller balances first, and then we make our way to the larger balances next. As long as your interest rates are within a couple points of each other, in the same ballpark, this may be the easiest thing to do because it may amplify your motivation to pay down the student loans once you start seeing some of the smaller balances totally eliminated. Even if it's an $800 loan or a $1,400 loan, getting that to zero can be a huge motivator for you. And then as you clear each loan, move on to the next one. Where a debt snowball method might not make the most sense is if your largest balance has a 9% interest rate, but your smallest balance has a 2% interest rate. That's where knocking down the larger balances may make the most sense. But if you're within a couple points of each other on all of your student loans, the debt snowball method is a great strategy. Next, take a look at your employer benefits and the advantages that come with that. Your employer may provide you a retirement plan. If they do, see if they match. If they match a certain percentage of your contribution, that's free money. They may contribute 3% or 4% based on what you contribute. If you don't contribute any, they won't contribute anything. But if you contribute 3 or 4%, they may match that contribution. So again, typically those are based on your gross pay. It's not a percentage of your contribution, it's a percentage of your gross pay, either weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, depending on how you're paid. And again, it's free money. Take advantage of it. So if you're looking for a place to start and not sure how much you should start contributing to your retirement account, that's a great place to start. Number 2, when it comes to employer retirement plans, set up gradual increases. When you set up your retirement plan contribution, you may be able to set up gradual percentage increases every year, where it's just automatic. So if you contribute 4% of your pay, you can set it up so next year it increases to 5, and then the next year it increases to 6 and to 7. Before you know it, 5 years later, you started at 5%, now you're contributing 10% of your pay. You're continuing to increase your pay, hopefully, right? You're getting paid a little bit more, so more money is going into the plan. And that's easier to budget around than to go from 5% of your pay to 10% of your pay overnight. And lastly, seek professional guidance. So everybody's situation is going to be different. This is not advice to your situation, these are just options to consider. Where a lot of these things can be done on your own, if you're not 100% sure where to start, seek guidance. Maybe a 401k provider through your employer has an advisor associated with it. Myself can help, other advisors may be able to help. Get an idea if it makes the most sense for you to pay your student loans off completely now, or to find a balancing act between the two. In some instances, if it helps you sleep better at night, you may say, you know what? My income is going to increase drastically over the next 5 years. I have $100,000 of student loan debt. My goal is to just knock this off within the next 3 years and then beef up my savings when my income grows over time. That's okay too. You run a couple different scenarios to see where you make out, but everyone's situation is going to be a little bit different, but we find this helpful.